April 20th, 1945. The German town of Eichenberg. The air tastes of brick dust and rot. For Staff Sergeant Frank Costello of Able Company, 9th Infantry Division, this is the flavor of victory. A bitter, gritty communion swallowed with every ragged breath. Eichenberg is just another name on a mud-splattered map, another knot in the unraveling fabric of the Third Reich. But for the men of his squad, it is the entire world. A world of shattered cobblestones, hollowed-out buildings, and the ever-present threat of a single, well-hidden Panzerfaust. The rhythmic crunch of their boots is the only sound they trust. Everything else, a rattling window shutter, the distant crump of artillery, the mournful groan of stressed timbers, is a potential death sentence. They move in a practiced, fluid crouch, a dance learned over hundreds of miles of torn-up European soil. Private First Class Jimmy Miller, all of 19 years old, and still with a face that belongs on a baseball card, keeps his M1 Garand tight to his shoulder, its stock scarred and dark with sweat. His eyes dart from shadow to shadow, scanning the second-story windows of what used to be a bakery. The sweet smell of burnt sugar still clings to the ruins, a ghostly memory of a life that no longer exists here. You can almost feel the ghosts watching, the civilians cowering in their cellars, listening to the guttural shouts in German and the clipped, foreign cadence of the Americans who have come to tear their world apart in order to save it. Costello raises a clenched fist. The squad freezes. Every man becomes part of the landscape, melting against stone walls and heaps of debris. The silence that follows is heavy, suffocating. It stretches for 10 seconds, then 20. Costello is listening, not with his ears, but with his skin, with the part of his gut that has kept him alive from North Africa to the Siegfried Line. There it is again. Not gunfire, not a vehicle, shouting. Angry, frantic shouting in German, coming from ahead, somewhere around the bend that opens into the town's main square, the Marktplatz. It's not the sound of combat. It's something else, something uglier. He motions 2 fingers forward. Miller and PFC Garcia creep ahead, hugging the wall of a collapsed haberdashery. The shouting grows louder, more distinct. A single voice, high and authoritative, barking commands. It's punctuated by another sound, a woman's voice, pleading, then breaking into a choked sob. Costello's gut tightens. This is wrong. In the chaos of urban warfare, you expect machine guns, grenades, the desperate last stands of Hitler youth boys with rifles bigger than they are. You don't expect this. This sounds like an execution. He follows his point men, the rest of the squad fanning out behind him. The M1918 Browning automatic rifleman, a heavy-set corporal named Tiny Malone, sets up the bipod of his weapon at the corner, providing overwatch. The air grows thick with a palpable tension, a sense of profane ritual about to unfold. They reach the edge of the square, peering cautiously around the corner of a stone archway. What they see makes the grime and the exhaustion and the ever-present fear of battle fall away, replaced by a cold, sharp shock. The Marktplatz is a ruin. The ancient fountain in its center is decapitated, its cherubs lying in a pile of stone limbs. But the destruction isn't what holds their gaze. Against the far wall of the gutted RAF house, the town hall, stands a small group of German soldiers. 4 of them. They are a motley collection. 2 are older men in ill-fitting Wehrmacht tunics, likely Volkssturm, the last dregs of the barrel. 1 is a regular army corporal, gaunt and hollow-eyed. The 4th man, however, wears the black uniform and chilling insignia of the Waffen-SS, an Unterscharführer, a junior NCO. His posture is rigid, his movements sharp with fanatical purpose. In his hand, he holds a Walther P38 pistol. His voice is the one they heard, spitting venomous German phrases into the damp air. And in front of them, facing the wall, is a woman. Her hands are tied behind her back. She wears the field gray uniform of a Flakhelferin, a female anti-aircraft auxiliary. Her blonde hair is matted with dirt, her shoulders shaking with uncontrollable tremors. This is not a partisan capture. This is an internal affair, a regime turning on its own in its death throes. Costello and his men have just stumbled into the Reich's private, self-devouring hell. The SS Unterscharführer doesn't see them yet. His entire being is focused on the ceremony of death he is orchestrating. He paces back and forth behind a makeshift firing squad, his jackboots crunching on shattered glass. He's reading from a piece of paper, his voice a harsh, theatrical pronouncement against the backdrop of ruin. The words are lost on the Americans, but the tone is universal. Accusation, sentence, damnation. The woman against the wall flinches with every syllable, her head bowed as if waiting for a physical blow. The two old Volkssturm soldiers fidget with their Karabiner 98K rifles, their movements clumsy, uncertain. They look less like executioners and more like pallbearers at a funeral they don't understand. Only the Wehrmacht corporal stands with grim resolve, his face a mask of weary duty. Costello makes a quick calculation. His squad of 8 against their 4. Favorable odds, but the open square is a killing field. A single burst from his bar could settle it, but the ricochets could hit the woman. And what if there were others? A machine gun nest in the town hall overlooking the square? A sniper in the church steeple? Every instinct screams trap. But they can't just watch. They can't just listen to the woman's soft, terrified weeping and do nothing. This is a line. Even in the abject horror of war, there are lines you don't cross. Watching a woman get shot in the back by her own side is one of them. Miller, Costello whispers, his voice barely a rasp. When I move, you put a round next to that SS bastard's ear. Don't hit him, just get his attention. Tiny, be ready to suppress that town hall, second floor. The men nod, their faces grim. The adrenaline is a coppery taste in their mouths. They have stormed bunkers and cleared trenches, but this feels different, more intimate, more wrong. Costello takes a breath, steps out from behind the archway, and raises his Thompson submachine gun. "Hey," he yells, the single English word slicing through the German monologue. The effect is instantaneous. The SS NCO whips around, his face a contortion of pure shock and incandescent rage. The two Volkssturm men jump, fumbling their rifles. The Wehrmacht corporal instinctively takes a half-step back, seeking cover that isn't there. For a frozen second, nobody moves. It's a tableau of two collapsing worlds colliding in a forgotten German square. The Americans, confident and battle-hardened, masters of this new reality. The Germans, a pathetic and fractured remnant of a dying order, caught in one last act of futile cruelty. The SS officer recovers first. He barks something in German, a command or a threat. He raises his Walther P-38, not at Costello, but pointing it defiantly toward the woman. His message is clear: stay back or she dies. The woman turns her head, her eyes wide with a terror so profound it seems to eclipse everything else. She sees the American soldiers, their olive-drab uniforms, the strange shape of their helmets. You can see the flicker in her gaze, a desperate, fragile spark. Is this salvation, or just a new set of executioners? Her mind, already strained to the breaking point, cannot possibly comprehend it. "Drop your weapons," Costello shouts, taking another step forward. The rest of his squad emerges from cover, spreading out, a semicircle of leveled M1s and the heavy, menacing barrel of Tiny's bar. The odds have now visibly, overwhelmingly shifted. The two old men look at each other, their resolve visibly crumbling. They have no desire to die for this officer, for this sentence, on this day. The Wehrmacht corporal's gaze flickers between the SS NCO and the Americans. He is a soldier caught between a duty he no longer believes in and a surrender he fears. But the SS man is a true believer. His face is pale, his lips drawn back in a snarl. He sees not defeat, but betrayal. He sees enemies in front of him and a traitor at his back. He screams another command, this time directly at his firing squad. He is not backing down. He intends to finish what he started, to spite the Americans who dared to interrupt him. He raises his pistol high in the air, his arm rigid, preparing to bring it down in the classic signal to fire. The moment is stretched thin, ready to snap. "Fertig machen!" The command rips through the air, sharp and final. Make ready. The Wehrmacht corporal and the two old men hesitate, but their training is a deeply ingrained reflex. They lift their rifles, the movement stiff, reluctant. The muzzles of the 3 antiquated carbines waver, pointing towards the woman's trembling back. Her shoulders heave with a silent sob. She knows what those words mean. Every German, soldier or civilian, knows. It is the beginning of the end. Time slows to a crawl. You can see the dust motes dancing in the slivers of sunlight piercing the smoke-filled sky. You can hear the frantic beat of your own heart, a drum pounding out a rhythm for the final, terrible act. Staff Sergeant Costello sees the scene through a strange, narrow tunnel. The SS officer's arm poised like a conductor's baton. The rifles of the firing squad. The woman's shaking form. He opens his mouth to shout, to give the order to fire, to shatter this grotesque pantomime before it can be completed. But before any sound can leave his lips, the woman herself breaks the spell. Her head snaps up. She twists her body, her face a mask of pure primal terror. Her eyes, wide and unseeing, fix on the American soldiers. And she screams. It's not a plea for mercy or a cry of defiance. It is the sound of a human soul utterly and completely breaking apart. Hilf mir, Sie werden mich töten! The German words fly across the square, a desperate, raw bridge of human fear. Help me, they'll kill me! The cry hangs in the air for a heartbeat, a sound so filled with anguish that it transcends language. And then her body gives out. Her legs, which have been holding her up through sheer will, buckle. She doesn't fall gracefully. She collapses, a dead weight, slumping to her knees and then pitching forward onto the dirty cobblestones in a heap of gray wool and despair. She lands hard, her face turned to the side, a thin trickle of blood appearing at her temple where she struck a stone. She is utterly still. The sudden, pathetic collapse of their victim throws the Germans into confusion. The 2 Volkssturm men lower their rifles, staring at the crumpled form on the ground. The Wehrmacht corporal looks to his commanding officer, his face a question. This isn't in the manual. They are supposed to shoot a prisoner standing defiantly, or at least standing, not a woman who has fainted from sheer terror. The spectacle has lost its grim authority. It has become pathetic, squalid. The SS Unterscharführer, however, is incensed. This is an interruption, a failure of protocol. He stalks forward, his face purple with rage, and nudges the woman's shoulder with his boot. He shouts at her to get up, a stream of furious invective. That single, contemptuous kick is what finally breaks the standoff. For PFC Jimmy Miller, watching from 20 yards away, it is an image of pure evil. The polished black boot against the fallen woman. He doesn't wait for an order. He doesn't think. He reacts. The sharp, distinctive crack of his M1 Garand echoes through the mark plots. The .30-06 round doesn't hit the SS man, just as Costello had ordered. It screams past his head and smashes into the wall behind him, blasting a fist-sized chunk of brick and mortar into the air. The SS officer flinches violently, stumbling back, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. He had forgotten for a moment about the other enemy, the one he couldn't bully. The spell is shattered. Costello roars, "Fire! Fire now!" Tiny Malone's bar opens up, not at the Germans, but at the second-story windows of the town hall, a deafening barrage of covering fire that sends stone chips and glass raining down into the square. The world dissolves into noise and motion. The mark plots erupts in a cacophony of violence. The thumping, rhythmic roar of Tiny Malone's BAR chewing up the facade of the Rathaus is the dominant sound, a terrifying wall of noise designed to keep heads down. The sharp cracks of M1 Garands join the chorus as the rest of Costello's squad opens fire. The 2 old Volkssturm soldiers, caught between the fanatical SS officer and the overwhelming firepower of the Americans, make their decision. They throw down their ancient rifles and raise their hands high, their faces pale with terror. They want no part of this Götterdämmerung. The Wehrmacht corporal is smarter. He dives behind the base of the broken fountain, firing a single, wild shot from his K98K before trying to work the bolt for another. But the real target, the nexus of the violence, is the SS Unterscharführer. He recovers from the shock of Miller's warning shot with inhuman speed, his rage overriding any sense of self-preservation. He brings his Walter P-38 around, not towards Costello, but towards the Wehrmacht corporal cowering behind the fountain. In his mind, the man is a deserter, a coward. Before he can fire, 3 rounds from Costello's Thompson hit him square in the chest. The impact lifts him off his feet, his body jerking backward as if struck by an invisible fist. The P-38 flies from his hand, clattering across the stones. He lands on his back, his black uniform already dark with a spreading stain, his eyes wide open, staring at a sky he can no longer see. "Doc, get the woman. Garcia, Miller, with me." Costello's voice cuts through the lingering echo of the gunfire. The squad's medic, a quiet technician from Ohio named Peterson, whom everyone called Doc, doesn't hesitate. He breaks from cover, his medical kit banging against his hip, and sprints across the open square. You never run in a straight line, but this is different. Every instinct is screaming to get to the fallen figure before another shot can be fired. Private Garcia follows him, his Garand up, covering the remaining German behind the fountain. Doc Peterson slides the last few feet on his knees, coming to a stop beside the unconscious woman. He gently turns her over. Her face is ashen, streaked with dirt and tears. The cut on her temple is shallow, but she is completely limp, a dead weight. "She's out cold, just fainted," he yells back over his shoulder. The fear had literally knocked her unconscious. Garcia arrives, planting his feet and leveling his rifle at the Wehrmacht soldier, who now peeks over the fountain, sees the SS officer is dead, and immediately throws his hands up in surrender. Costello and Miller move in on the surrendering Germans, their movements efficient and professional. The firefight, which felt like an eternity, lasted less than 15 seconds. The immediate threat is over, but the mission has changed. Doc Peterson is now focused entirely on his patient. He cuts the ropes binding her wrists. Her hands are pale and bloodless. He checks her pulse. It's rapid, thready, but it's there. He cradles her head, shielding it from the hard ground. "Let's get her out of here," he says to Garcia. "Help me lift her." Together, the medic and the private carefully lift the woman. She is surprisingly light, almost frail. Her head lolls back, her breathing shallow. As they carry her, one of her arms dangles lifelessly, the sleeve of her gray uniform brushing against the blood-spattered wall where she was meant to die. They move quickly, carrying her back towards the archway, back towards the relative safety of the shadows. The rest of the squad is disarming the 3 German prisoners, their movements rough but devoid of malice. For them, it is routine. But for everyone in that square, the image of the 2 American soldiers carrying the unconscious German woman away from her own firing squad is anything but. It is a moment of profound, startling humanity in a landscape that has been bled dry of it. They pull her into the rubble of the haberdashery, the scent of cordite and death clinging to them, the adrenaline slowly giving way to a deep, unsettling quiet. Inside the shell of the bombed-out shop, the world shrinks. The chaos of the Marktplatz is muted, replaced by the sound of labored breathing and the gentle rustle of Doc Peterson's hands as he works. He lays the woman down on a pile of dusty fabric, propping her head up on a folded blanket he pulls from his pack. He cleans the cut on her temple with a piece of gauze from his kit. The wound is superficial, a minor injury in a war of catastrophic ones. The true damage lies deeper, somewhere behind her closed eyelids. Costello stands guard at the doorway, his Thompson held at a low ready, watching the squad round up the prisoners in the square. The brief, violent catharsis of the firefight has passed, leaving a strange and heavy atmosphere in its wake. Slowly, the woman begins to stir. Her eyelids flutter, then open. Her eyes are a pale, washed-out blue, filled with a bottomless confusion. She stares up at the ruined ceiling, then at the unfamiliar face of Doc Peterson leaning over her. For a moment, there is no recognition, only a blank slate. Then memory comes rushing back in a tidal wave. Her body convulses with a single violent tremor. She tries to scramble away, crab-walking backward into the debris, her breath coming in ragged, panicked gasps. Her eyes dart around, from Doc to Garcia to the hulking silhouette of Costello in the doorway. She sees the American uniforms, the strange helmets, the foreign weapons. She doesn't see saviors. She sees a new set of captors. Ruhig, Doc says softly, using one of the few German words he knows. Calm down. He holds up his hands, open and empty, to show he means no harm. He offers her his canteen. Wasser, water. She stares at it, then at him, her chest still heaving. Timidly, she reaches out a trembling hand and takes it. She drinks greedily, spilling water down her chin and onto the front of her uniform. The simple act of drinking seems to anchor her, pulling her back from the edge of hysteria. Costello turns from the doorway. He gestures to one of the captured Volkssturm men, a grandfatherly figure with a deeply lined face, and brings him into the shop. Ask her what happened, Costello says, his voice low. Why were they going to shoot you? The old German soldier looks from Costello to the woman, his expression a mixture of pity and fear. He speaks to her in soft, regional German. At first, she doesn't respond, just stares into the middle distance. Then, in a halting, broken voice, she begins to speak. Her name is Anya. She was an auxiliary with an anti-aircraft battery stationed on the edge of town. 2 days ago, as the American armor approached, her commanding officer, the SS Unterscharführer, had ordered them to fight to the last bullet. He had given a speech about final victory and heroic sacrifice. Anya, seeing the hopelessness of their position, had told another girl that it was over, that they should try to surrender, or they would all die for nothing. Someone overheard. She was immediately arrested, branded a defeatist and a traitor. A drumhead court-martial, lasting all of 5 minutes, had been convened that morning by the SS officer. The sentence was death, to be carried out immediately as an example to anyone else whose faith was wavering. As the old man translates, the American soldiers listen in silence. The story is both shocking and, in the context of the collapsing Reich, entirely believable. This wasn't about espionage or treason in a military sense. She was to be executed for speaking the truth, for acknowledging the reality that they were all living. For a moment, you can put yourself in her shoes. Imagine knowing the war is lost, that your entire world is crumbling, and that the price for admitting it out loud is a bullet in the back from your own people. The fanaticism is almost incomprehensible. For Costello, Miller, and the others, the war has just shifted on its axis. They were fighting an army. Now, it seems, they are fighting a suicidal cult. Costello looks at the woman, Anya. She is no longer an enemy combatant or a prisoner of war in the traditional sense. She is a refugee, a victim of the very same tyranny they had crossed an ocean to destroy. The war, for this small squad in this broken town, has become deeply personal. They didn't just capture another piece of German real estate. They had intervened in a private execution, a final, futile spasm of Nazi ideology. They had saved a life that, by all accounts, was already forfeit. As they prepare to move out, taking Anya and their 3 new prisoners with them, the mood is somber. The victory in the square feels hollow, overshadowed by the chilling glimpse they've had into the abyss. They are moving deeper into a Germany that is not just defeated, but is actively consuming itself from within. And they are taking a piece of that broken world with them.